Welcome to Learn It, a series of digital scrapbooking tutorials by Studio Wendy at Scrapbook Graphics. Today I wanted to demonstrate the Alpha Stacker scripts and actions to you. This was a special request from a customer who wanted to be able to take individual PNG alpha letters and put them onto a single sheet. So what we have here is the download, and you'll see that we have an Actions folder and a Scripts folder. The Scripts folder, you have the Wendyzine scraps, and then in that you have the Alpha Stacker scripts. If you already have installed some of my scripts before, you will already have a Wendyzine scraps folder created on your computer. If not, you need to create one by copying the Wendyzine scraps folder with the contents here into the appropriate location on your computer. And that changes depending on what operating system you have. So be sure to look at the PDF tutorial on installing scripts to find out where that location is. If you already have a Wendyzine scraps folder, then you want to copy this WZ Alpha Stacker scripts folder into the Wendyzine scraps folder. And for Photoshop users, this is not the scripts folder that is in your Photoshop application area. This is a completely different area, so be sure that you look at the tutorial to see where to put it. And then we have our Actions folder. And if you open the Actions folder, you'll see here that we have separate actions for Mac, Windows XP, and Windows Vista 7 or 8. That's because the actions are going to call in the scripts, and the scripts are in a different location depending on your operating system. So be sure you grab the correct set of actions. So I have loaded into Photoshop and Photoshop Elements the Alpha Stacker and the Alpha Stacker bonus actions. For CS and CC, there's two action sets here. But if you look in the PSE versions, they're all individual and they're just floating all in there for both sets, all in one folder. For the PSE 11, because you can load that in more than one way, if you load it through the Actions panel, you can choose here the two different sets, just like the Photoshop CS version, or you can load the classic method with the thumbnails using the PSE 7 version. So that's what comes in your download, and let's pop over to Photoshop, and then we're going to look in Elements as well and see how it works. Here we are in Photoshop Creative Cloud Edition. You'll see here that I've loaded into my Actions panel the Alpha Stacker and the Alpha Stacker bonus, and I just wanted to explain real quickly here what each of these does. The Alpha Stacker is the initial startup action that you want to run no matter what else you plan to do. And this Alpha Stacker action is going to load all of your letters onto your canvas. Then you have three choices. You have an Align 5, an Align 6, and Align 7. These will take 5, 6, or 7 letters, depending on which action you choose, and space them out across your page. Then you have the Saver action. Then down in the bonus action, because these original ones work from the letter Z backwards, I had a request to work from the letter A forwards, and that's what these A actions do. So they'll work from A forwards. It really is just a personal preference which way you like to work. Both will end up with the same exact result. Now, also included here is an instruction file which you can play through and will give you all the instructions. This is included as a separate file. That way when you get going, you don't have to click through the messages every single time you're playing back the actions. So this tells us first we need to run the Alpha Stacker, which will create a 12 by 12. We want to work in batches. So it's easier if you create a sheet with just uppercase letters and just lowercase letters. But if you do happen to have an alpha that contains maybe a few numbers, you can go ahead and just work in one batch. Let's press continue. We're told we need to run an alignment action, and we want to choose 5, 6, or 7. If you have letters that are quite wide, you'll probably want to go with a lower number, like the 5 or 6. If you have a row of letters that are more narrow, like the letter I, you might want to use the number 7 action. And then as you get to the end, pay attention to how many letters you have left. That way you can balance it out if you want to. So press continue. When we run the action will pause, for the first letter will be in the upper right-hand corner, and you just want to make sure that's inset from the edge a little bit. And then this just has some tips that I find that with a standard alpha, 2 rows of 6 and 2 rows of 7 work nicely. If you have 4 or less letters, you just need to move those manually. And then you have, lastly, the saver action, which will save your PSCS file and check for gamma in PSCS only. Press continue, and that's the instructions. I'm going to pop over to Photoshop Elements now to show you how these actions just show up a little bit differently there, and then we'll get started running the actions. Okay, over here in Photoshop Elements, you'll see here that I am in quick mode. When I'm in quick mode, I cannot get to my actions panel. So I want to go ahead and go over to expert mode. Once I click on expert mode, all of a sudden my actions panel shows up here. And I can move that out of the way if I want to. Now this actions panel in PSE 11 is new, and you can load your actions right through this drop down menu here. Just choose load actions and go find that PSE 11 file. If you prefer to have the icons, you can also run that through your effects panel and install them quote unquote the old way, where you copy all of the PNG, XML, and ATN files into the appropriate folder. And you'll see here I've loaded this action here as well. And this will give you the icons instead. And I've labeled these icons step 1, step 2, and step 3. And then for step 2, here's where you're going to choose either your 5, 6, or 7, and whether you want it to go from A to Z or Z to A. So we're going to close out of this and get started. In Elements, of course, I need to have a new file open to begin with, so any size is fine. And then we're going to double click on the first action and press continue. Here is where we need to choose the alpha that we want to load. So click on the little button here to choose the folder. I'm going to choose Sissy Sparrow's Solitary Echo Alpha here. You'll see that it does have an uppercase alpha and some numbers, so we're going to end up with an extra row or 2 in our alpha, and that's perfectly okay. Just say open, and then say okay. And then we will watch as Photoshop takes each of these letters, copies them, and pastes them into our brand new document. Then we're prompted to save the alpha. I like to save my layered files as TIFF files and use LZW and zip compression for the smallest file size. If you get this message, including layers will increase file size, we know that. You can press Don't Show Again to dismiss it, and you won't get that message again. Press OK. Our file has saved, and now we're ready to start aligning our letters. So I am going to start with 5 letters. I'm going to choose the Align 5 and double click or press play. The first letter comes up and it's placed over here to the right. As long as it's inset from the edge, then it's perfect. We can just press enter or click the green check mark. If the alpha showed up too close to the edge or off the edge, you just want to grab it, hold in your shift key, and drag it over so that it's inset somewhat from the edge. This is going to help with our spacing later, so just press to commit it when you're happy. Photoshop will then distribute the other letters in that stack, and in this case, because we're working from Z backwards up to A, we just want to click and drag these letters down to the very bottom of the canvas and press enter. And our first row is done. Now let's try the 6 action. Here we go. Our U is moved over. We're going to press the check mark to apply it, and we're going to drag our letters down. The 7 is going to work in just the same way. And we can keep going here. I think the 7s are a little tight here, so let's go ahead and try another 6. Now, since we're getting towards the end of the alpha, we want to keep in mind how many letters we have left so that we can distribute them a little bit better. And we know that we have 10 numbers and we have the letters A and B to go. So that's a total of 12. Running the 6 action 2 more times will end up perfectly. So let's go ahead and do that. And since we have an extra row of numbers here, I'm actually going to bump this up off of the screen here and press enter. Now I'm going to make my canvas just a little bit larger to accommodate the extra row. Typically, if you're just working through A through Z, you won't have to do this. There, now we can see that. And now I see that I had a question mark and an @ symbol in here that I didn't account for. So I actually have a couple of extra letters, which is fine. Now what we can do, since we have less than 4 letters that need to be spaced out, we will just have to do those manually. So I'm going to come down here and grab those last few letters and just move them in place manually. Just be sure when you are moving your letters over manually that you're not running them off the page like I just did with that. And then if you want to make any other adjustments, now's the time to do it. So I see that from the letter U up through the letter C, I'm not really happy with the spacing there. So I can grab those by shift clicking here and using my arrow key to bump those down and get a little bit more space around them. Once I'm happy with it, I can go back to my effects panel and choose the Save Stack option. When I run that, Photoshop will prompt me to save this alpha, and I'm going to call it Sissy Sparrow's Solitary Echo Alpha.png. Click OK. If I wanted to, I could save this layered Photoshop file as well, but I don't need to, so I'm just going to close out of that. And then I'm going to go back and check my alpha here. And you'll see here we have a nice, neatly trimmed alpha with 1 layer that's now in a PNG file, and perfect for those who want to scrap with alpha sheets. So that is how the alpha stacker works. I'm going to show you one other thing by opening back up that original file that we saved. Here's all my letters still stacked up in the corner. And when we go over here, I'm going to show you the difference between the A version and the regular version. So I'm just going to select the 5, press play or double click on it. You'll see in this case it's selecting the first 5 letters. And then if we press play again, I'm getting the next 5 letters, which I can then drag down below. So you'll see this one's working from the top down instead of the bottom up. That's the only difference between the A and the original. I hope this video has been helpful. Thanks for trying out the Alpha Stacker, and I will see you next time.